All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So this is already in factored form. It's already in factor form. So we're going to start off by finding our zero. So we have three factors. Go ahead and set all three of these equal to 0 to get your factors. Not your factors, your zeros. So you have x equals 0, x plus 2 equals 0, and x plus 4 equals 0. So that means my first x-intercept is 0, 0. My second one is at -2, and the third one is at -4. So what I want to also talk about today is what does the exponent on the factor do? Does everyone notice here? Let me zoom in real quick. Do you see how this x has an exponent of 1 and this one has an exponent of 1? Whenever these are actually called your multiplicities. It's a really fancy word, but it means exponent. So whenever the multiplicity is odd, so if this exponent on the factor is odd, that simply tells me that it's going to go through x-axis. But when that number, so you see how my pink factor, the x plus 2, that's even. When it's even, it'll bounce off. And I think the book says touches. So that's also, I think that in the homework it asks you, does it bounce or does it touch or something like that. I can't remember exactly how it's worded, but we're looking at the exponent on the actual factor. So I just wanted to mention that, but we'll come back and talk about that a lot more throughout today's lesson.
So what would be the multiplicity in this problem?
The exponent is, the multiplicity is the factor on each, the exponent on each factor.
Okay.
So this one has, so this here, so this 0, 0, because it's odd, I know that it's going to go through. It's going to go through the x-axis at 0, 0. At -2, because it's even, it's going to bounce. And at the -4, it's also going to go through. And we'll see that when we actually graph it. Go ahead and plot those 3 points.
Miss Bryan, I have to tell you, in geometry, I got a 94 on a test. I was so proud because I remember that exact test last year. I was taking constant L's in geometry last year. I just passed, but I went to take it for a higher grade, and I'm doing pretty well, you know.
I'm proud of you too.
Thank you.
Okay, so our end behavior. So to figure out our end behavior, we're going to add together all of our multiplicities or exponents. So that would be 1 plus 2 plus 1, which is 4. And 4 is even. So that means the arrows will go in the same direction. So we need to figure out, is it going to go up, up, or down, down? And that's based off of this, x. So because this is positive, what does that tell me my arrows are going to do? Go up. So I'm going to go to the -4, which is my 0 furthest to the left. I'm going to draw an arrow going up. And then the 0 also has an arrow going up. So we just need to get what's going on in between. So we need to plug in the midpoint. So what's my first number I'm going to substitute in? That's in between -4 and -2? -3, and then between -2 and 0. All right, so pick up your calculators. If there's not one on your desk, there should be one around you. Go ahead and find f of -2. Not f -2, sorry. F of -3, because we already know at -2 is 0. So we got to find f of -3 and f of -1. Okay, so that would be -3. So I just plugged in the x value that I'm looking for. So pick up your calculators and get your points. What did we get for the first one? -3? Raise your hand if you got -3 for the first point. All right, that's a lot of people. Anybody not get -3? Anybody need help typing it in? All right. And now check for your -1, see what you got. If I remember right from first period, I think you get -3 again. It felt wrong, yeah, it's the same. All right, so let's go ahead and plot our point. So I'm gonna zoom in. We're gonna put a point at -3, -3, and -1, -3. And now you're just gonna connect it. Connect it all together. Okay, so let's go back to what we started off with, the through, bounce through. So if you look at the 0, 0, do you see how the graph is behaving? At the 0, 0, because the multiplicity is 1, do you see how the graph is going through the x-axis? But when it gets to the -2, it doesn't go through it. It touches it, makes a U-turn, and comes back down, and -4 it goes through. So we knew that based off the factor. So -2, it doesn't go through. It just, some book says bounce. I think the book you have says touches. And you could tell that just based off of this exponent. So I knew because this was even that it wasn't going to go through at -2. Yes, Karma?
If the first factor was a real number,
Like 3.
yeah, it goes to the power of 0, so it would be hard.
So you only count your exponents. So for that one, if the first one was a 2, then you would only have,
Oh, because it's not considered.
right.
Okay.
All right, so this one was in factor form. So let's do one that's not in factor form. So let's go ahead and copy down this one. And then we'll go through to writing equations in standard form. So the last one we did was in factor form, so that was a lot easier, but this one is in standard form, so we have to factor it first. So our first question is, do we have a GCF? And if we do, what is it? -2x. So I want you to divide all three terms by -2x. And then you're going to factor that down again. So you want to make sure it's fully factored before you start finding your zeros. What does that factor down to?
X plus 1 and x plus 3.
X plus 1 and x plus 3. All right, let's go ahead and set all three of these equal to 0. So you have negative 2x equals 0, x plus 1 equals 0, x plus 3 equals 0. You're going to divide both sides by negative 2. So that would be 0, 0 for the first one. Negative 1, 0 for the second one. The negative 3, 0. So, and this is homework 14. I think homework 14, they're all in standard form. And you have to factor it. You're going to just follow the same steps. Get your zeros, end behavior, midpoint, sketch it out, done. So I'm going to go ahead and plot my points. All right, so now let's talk about end behavior. This is an odd degree because it's a third degree. That's my highest exponent. If it's already in standard form, just look for the highest power. It's just easier that way. I mean, or you could go to your factors, but you're going to add them all up because they all have a multiplicity of 1. 1 plus 1 plus 1 is 3. Or you can look at it in standard form, it's 3. But either way, we know it's odd. And it's also a negative because that leading coefficient is negative. So that tells me that furthest to the right, which is on my 0, what am I going to do? Show me with your thumbs. Is it going to go up or down right here? I would agree, yeah, at the 0 because it's furthest to the right. Let's draw an arrow that goes down. And then the 0 furthest to the left, which is negative 3, is it going to follow the same or do the opposite?
Do the opposite.
It's going to do the opposite because it's odd. So let's draw an arrow that goes up. So the numbers that we need to plug in now, let me zoom in. I need the number in between these two zeros. The midpoint would be negative 2. And then what's in between negative 1 and 0? Negative 0.5. So let's go ahead and pick up your calculators and substitute in negative 2 and negative 0.5. And it doesn't matter which format you use. You can use standard form, which would be this one that I have highlighted in green. Or you can substitute it into the factor form. You get the same answer if you use the green way or the pink way. It does not matter which way you use it. I think I used, sometimes I use factor form, sometimes I use standard form. I mean, it is really no different. I think I'll use the factor form. Okay, so we got negative 2. times -2. Then I have -2 plus 1, -2 plus 3, and then I have -2 times -0.5, and then I have -0.5 plus 1, and -0.5 plus 3. All right, go ahead and plug it in. Okay, so I knew that the 0 was going to go down because this here is negative. And whatever this sign is tells me what it does on the right. So if it was positive, it would have went up. But because that's a -2 in standard form, or even in factor form, I have a -2, my GCF was negative, then I knew the right arrow would go down. All right, pick up your calculators, see what you get. I want to say -4 for the first one. You got -4? Okay. For the first one. And the second one is a decimal, and we'll just round that to like the 10th place. Because it's, it's a decimal, so. Now that one I cannot do because, it's decimal, so I can't do that without a calculator. What you all get for the second one? I think it's 1 point something. 1.25. I'm going to round it to 1.3. Okay. All right, so that means at -2, I'm going to go down to -4. And then, oh wait, it's a little higher than 1, so we'll go up to here. So it looks like that. And if you look at the graph, notice how every single time the graph is going through the x-axis. It always goes through because each one of these has a multiplicity of 1. So every single 0 is going to go through. And if we look at our actual sketch, that's what it did. All right, so now we're going to transition into writing equations. So in standard form. So let's go to example 5. Let me skip over that one for today. All right. And we're only doing A and B today. But they take a lot of space, so I would recommend we just write down one at a time. So we're going to pick up at C tomorrow. So go ahead and copy this down. Standard form simply means that it's fully multiplied. So on the test, if it asks you for factor form, that's really easy. But standard form means we have to fully multiply it through. So I'll give you a minute to copy that down, and then we'll work through it. So the first step is going to be to write your factors, and then the next thing you just multiply it and combine like terms. It's pretty simple. So we have 3 zeros. So if I have a 0 at positive 2, that means my factor would be what? X minus 2. Good, because that's how you get a positive 2. And then if I have a 0 at x equals 4, that means my factor would be x minus 4. And then lastly, if I have a 0 at x equals negative 1, it means I have a factor at x plus 1. So we simply need to multiply these through together. So go ahead and pick 2, make a box, unless you know the shortcut. Multiply those together. You can only multiply 2 at a time. So these two are like terms. So when I multiply, I get x squared minus 6x plus 8. So now I need to take that and multiply it by x plus 1. So we got to make a second box. And this time our box is going to be bigger. So let's make our second box. Go ahead and fill in all 6 squares. All right, who had that in their 6 squares? Go ahead and check that. And I do like the box for multiplying 3 by 2s. So these two are like terms. We can add those together. And my x's. So my final answer is y equals, and I have x cubed. And when I add these two together, that gives me what? 1 and negative 6. 1 and negative 6 is negative 5. So I'm going to be really looking for the signs of your coefficients when you take your quiz next week. And then the negative 6 plus 8 is a positive 2. And this would be your answer, your final answer. All right, we'll do one more. But I'll give you a chance to copy that down. Yeah. Yep, that's our standard form. If it asks you for factor form, that would be really easy because that would just be y equals x minus 2 times x minus 4 times x plus 1. That's factor form. But standard form means we have to fully multiply them all together. So in standard form, there should be no parentheses left. And that is my final answer.
But we have to, if we have another equation that has the x squared and the x and then the regular number, are we doing like 9 boxes?
Yeah, we will have more boxes, yeah. I don't think we'll go that high though. Yeah. All right, anyone need more time to copy this down before I erase it? Okay. Everybody got it? Okay. All right, so we'll do B next. And now we're adding the multiplicity in there, which simply means exponents. And then tomorrow we'll talk about what if one of your zeros is imaginary. What does that look like? So go ahead and copy this one down. We have 3 zeros. So 3 factors. And the word multiplicity simply means the exponent on the factor. So the exponent that I'm putting on the factor, on 2 of them, the factor is only 1. But on that last one where it's x equals 0, that one is squared. So instead of it being just an x, it's x squared. So that word multiplicity, it's a fancy word, but it just means our exponent on the factor.
Is it like the x inside the parentheses squared or the like whole parentheses?
The whole parentheses. So when we have x equals 3, so this one I would have a factor of x minus 3. And this one, my factor would be x minus 1. Now for 0, that's actually a pretty easy one to do because whenever it's 0, your factor is just x. Like there is no parentheses for 0 because 0 doesn't have a sign. It's not positive or negative. So that's just going to be an x squared. Because it says the multiplicity is 2, that means I have to square the x. All right, so this one is honestly not as bad as some of the future ones because we only have to make 1 box. So go ahead and make a box. Multiply these 2 together. And then you're going to take your answer and multiply it by x squared. And then the x squared comes down to the front. Go ahead and distribute that x squared. And that's your final answer. So that is your standard form equation. Your factor form, they didn't ask for it, but I'm going to give it to you. If they ask you for factor form, this would be factor form. And the order that you put your factors, it doesn't matter. So the x squared could also be at the end.